Hello, everybody. We're back. The usual routine here. No edits, no nets. We're just going to start filming and go. You ready for me, Bev?
Sure.
All right. We're going to speak a little bit louder. A couple of you said you couldn't hear Bev last week. Say, turn up your hearing volume in your hearing aids. I'm turning up mine.
Okay. You have a reminder here to let people know that the social media is full of scammers, people posing to be you asking for money.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to let everybody know there's all kinds of people out there asking to sell you identification cards, Hells Angels support gear. I have nothing to do with any of that stuff. I will never, ever, ever ask you for money. So if there's somebody that's professing to be me and he's calling you brother and he wants to let you know what a great supporter you are and he asks you for a $300 charge card, it's not me. Only time I ever ask for money is if you go to my website and you try to buy a book or you know something to that effect. But I don't ask people for money as donations or just to be generous. Don't fall for that bullshit because that's all it is a bunch of bullshit. Okay, first question.
Matt at Self Reliance writes, is the lifestyle of the outlaw biker on borrowed time?
That's a good question. I think that there's a lot of countries that are moving towards outlawing, no pun intended, particular bike clubs, and I think you're going to start seeing more and more legislation. It seems to be becoming popular and bigger, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of restraint in some of the things people are doing. I read about gunfights and I read about this and I read about that. These different cavalier charges people get put on them. You kind of have to police yourself and you have to understand that times are changing. And if you don't change with the times, you're going to be obsolete in a sense. It's probably in the mid 90s, 1995 and whatnot, I started talking to the Hells Angels about don't let us become like the last set of outlaws that went into a new century and ultimately we were around no more. I'm talking about, the old cowboy outlaw types, but I was making reference to us, to the outlaw motorcycle club, to the banditos, to the Mongols, to the Vagos, to all of them that if we don't watch what we're doing, we're going to become a thing of the past. And I think it's time to really reflect on things. I can remember the century just turned, and now we're up to 2025. 25 years went by in a blink of a eyelash, and we don't know what's going to happen in the next 25 years. Being an outlaw motorcycle guy may be against the law. So, yeah, I think that it's something to concern ourselves about. I won't be here, but hopefully you guys will, and you'll do something about it. All right.
Paul Mead writes, what happened to Tiny Walters?
You know, that's an interesting question. I have there's a retired police officer up in the Northern California area sends me pictures sometimes. His dad was also a police officer, so they have a father son team, and he says there's a rumor in law enforcement that there was a murder plot against Tiny, and it became revealed, and that Tiny disappeared, not from a mishap. He just disappeared to save his own life. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know how to follow up on it. This guy's searching for some more police reports for me. But, I have to take this stuff. I have police officers write me. I have lawyers write me. I have outlaw, motorcyclists write me with this different information they give me. And I don't talk about all of it, but, this subject comes up a lot. And, I myself would like to know what happened to Tiny. But it's kind of up in the air. We don't know what happened to him. Guy was, what, 6'6", and he just disappears off the face of the earth. I don't know. It seems suspicious. Anyways,
Robert KB39 writes, do you feel that coming up in the 60s and 70s was the optimal time for outlaws? Make a comparison.
well, I know back in the '60s and even the '70s. The '70s was a real rough decade. That's when violence started being committed on, you know, each other. Or when I say each other, members of bike clubs doing things to each other. But I think that the '60s was great. I used to love the '60s because you'd be riding a motorcycle and you'd run into another outlaw type biker, and you definitely wanted to find out where he was from, what he was all about, and it was like coming across somebody that had a like mind, and you wanted to interact with them. So I think the '60s and '70s were special. '80s were pretty cool. Things started changing in the '90s, and 2025, and here we are today. I was in another trial as a defense expert last week. I was just observing, preparing, to testify in the behalf of the defense, and the law enforcement's got all bases covered. It's a heck of a story they're painting, and so I think those special years, '60s, '70s, and '80s are kind of a thing of the past. It's pretty tough being an outlaw biker nowadays.
Okay, John Ralston wants to know, was the release of a pagan leader instrumental in a former member's return? Politics seem to be alive and well in the outlaw biker community.
Well, yeah, I made that little last statement. I made an observation, and I added that last sentence. Politics are alive and well, and that happens. A leader of that club, powerful leader, went away during the course of his incarceration. Some political things happened. Somebody that had a lot of power at one time got voted out of the club. Now they're both back together, and that happens. I know. In my new book, I wrote a story about Rotten Richard and how Sonny wanted Rotten Richard to come back. He was a Richmond member, and Sonny tried to use his political power to change his status so he could come back. So stuff's been going on for decades, and it'll continue to go on. Okay.
Cleet S. Jones writes, what can you tell us about George Weathern?
Well, George Weathern, he's got a book out, Wayward Angel. It's worth a read. He talks about that mess up at his ranch where they dumped the bodies. He became an informant. I will tell you something else about George, whether I'm not going to reveal too much about it, but there are people interested in perhaps making a movie about his life and how he flipped on the Hells Angels. He was kind of like the first major guy to flip and testify against the club. Anybody that knows the history, he tried to put his eyes out with pencils. He didn't want to face, his former brothers when he was informing. But there's some heavy players interested in this movie. If it happens, it'll be a real interesting movie, and I don't know how everyone will be perceived in it. There's the people that think the Hells Angels and the outlaw bike style is bad. Will probably rally with George Weathern, and the people that think they're the last American heroes will rally around the outlaws that were being persecuted. But read the book, Wayward Angel, if you want to know about George Weathern.
Okay, Money Gets Money. Talk about Monty and his death.
Well, I didn't go to that funeral. I made a trip back to Chicago later when I found out Taco had sent some people to Ventura to kill me. But it's kind of a funny story, if you can find any humor in a funeral. One of the guys that went back there, our guys wanted retribution on the outlaws. And one of the guys, he went back, they had strict orders for me. This guy was kind of a loose cannon. I said, go back there, attend the funeral. You're all booked in I personally made his flight there and his flights back. And I talked to the guys in Chicago about it. I said, go there, go to the funeral, respectfully spend some time at the wake, and then get on the plane and come home. And he missed his flight. And then a few days later, he was arrested for conspiring to blow up some outlaws. The whole thing was a fiasco. Now, Monty's murder was a terrible thing. There's a ATF agent. He's on TV sometimes. I met him through a mutual friend doing podcasts and whatnot and my television adventures. And he told me that he saw some video of the Monty's murder, and he said it was one of the brutalest things he'd ever seen. And this guy's no lightweight. He's a real stand-up guy. He was an undercover guy for years. And, that's when I think Spike O'Neill was really running amok, put a lot of effort into keeping the Hells Angels out of that particular area. But that's what I know.
Okay, John Awake 4306 says, you're a good informant.
Well, I consider myself a historian. I've not given anybody up. Nobody's going to jail by anything that I have to say. But I'll tell you, there's also something else I'm really good at. But you need to talk to your mom about that.
Jesus, George. Okay, X Channel 8806. How has clothing and fashion changed? 70s was cool. You are the flannel king. You have the same outfit on now on the day I met you, and it varies so little. So come on, fashion king.
I've been dressing the same for years, and David Ortega and I. Are you done, Bev? Is that it?
That's it.
You're no longer needed?
No, I'm gonna let you talk about the fashion.
Oh, well, I'm a fashionista. Is that how they say that? Fashionista.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can't even describe it properly. David Ortega and I used to have these specific things. You had the Levi's, the boot cut with the press crease sewn in the front of the leg. My mom used to do them. David even did a couple himself. David's a pretty good seamstress, I guess, if you will. Designed a lot of patches and whatnot. We used to go to the Goodwill back in those days. You could go there and get a nice wool work shirt for 20, 25 cents in the 60s. But we tried to look cool. I remember somebody was talking about the little bells that people used to put on their front ends, and some of the guys would wear them on their engineer boots. We used to cut the straps on the engineer boots and lace them. I see some pictures once in a while floating around. But, we were trying to look cool. We weren't, I guess, if you're cool, you're just cool. And that's the way it used to be in the old days. But, I see a lot of people that look like they're stepping out of the 70s. I get a kick out of it when I see them because it takes me back in time. But, I appreciate the compliment. I don't, set out every day to set some sort of trend. You can see I'm not too trendy. But anyways, maybe in a sense I am. By not being trendy, I'm being trendy. But anyways, that's it for the questions this week. I got an anonymous Gmail last week, and come to my Gmail, and you get these crazy email addresses that you can't trace down, and it was actually signed anonymous, but he said Ventura had a fierce reputation for protecting its area, and can you give us some insight into that, including the tattoo business? There's always rumors running around town about that only one tattoo shop was allowed in Ventura. But I think the way the reputation started is, we ran all the other clubs out of Ventura. We had the Mongols and the Syndicate, the Molochs. There were a lot of different bike clubs, and we came here and we became the dominant outlaw bike club in Ventura. We did have another bike club there called the Orphans, and we were going to try to use them as a support club. They'd been here since the mid-'60s, late 60s, early 70s. I can't remember when they first came on board in Ventura, but we got the idea from the Outlaws and the Banditos. I started seeing they were having support clubs, and I got the idea, well, let's keep the Orphans intact, and let's draw from them for the Ventura charter. And it just it just didn't work out. The other bike club we allowed was the Los Borrachos. They were like a family club. So ultimately, it came down. You had two choices in Ventura. You either joined the Ventura Hells Angels or the Los Borrachos. But the the orphans got shut down because their conduct was completely unacceptable. They were snorting a lot of angel dust, cannabinol. The last incident, and I've talked about it before, they took all their clothes off and were running down Main Street in Ventura, then up California Street to the old City Hall, buck ass naked, shooting guns off. And us being the dominant club, we had a responsibility. That's the way old man John taught me. We had a responsibility to maintain order, and we put those guys out of business. And they lost their clubhouse and their shop to arson. Never been solved, but and I'm not accepting responsibility for it. Even though the statute of limitations ran out years ago, and people write me, well, come on, confess. Well, I'm not confessing to that. I don't know who did it. It's still suspicious. But we had just the two club policy, and we also had an unwritten rule that, and for 40 years, there was only one tattoo shop in town. And it's interesting. For 40 years, there was only one tattoo shop in town. It started with Scurvy George had a tattoo shop. Scurvy George's Tattoo. And in 1977, George died, and I inherited the business. His widow gave it to me, and I changed the name to Ventura Tattoo. Ultimately, changed it to the Ink House. Moved up to Ventura on Main Street, and that's when I really understood what the term location meant, because we moved up there and the place just blew up. I don't think people had ever noticed. A lot of people didn't come down to the Ventura Avenue area. That's where the clubhouse was and the initial tattoo shops were. But when we moved to Main Street, it became kind of cool and vogue. We were doing piercing in there and whatnot. So, the rumor started in the late 70s. There'd only be one shop in the city. We never addressed that. It just happened. In the year 2000, there was a guy, Jason Magana, I think his name was, and he worked for the Ink House. He worked for me. And for whatever reason, he decided he was going to open his own shop up in Ventura, but he went about it the wrong way. He became very cavalier and basically said, fuck the Hells Angels. I've got the backing of the Oxnard street gangs, who in turn answer to the Mexican mafia. So I'm going to do what I want. And, he opened up the shop, and somebody firebombed it, and the whole goddamn block almost burnt down. That was in 2000. By mid 2000s, the tattoo business was changing. They were starting to have shows on TV, tattoo conventions. Celebrities were getting tattooed, whether they be band people, actors, sports celebrities. And in 2005, we started, seeing and hearing rumblings of people wanting to open a tattoo shop up. Now, I wouldn't talk to anybody about it. I just was very suspicious. I just wouldn't get in a discussion about any type of business because of, had organized crime allegations, and that I was connected to some wise guys and whatnot. So I was very careful. By now, my daughter was a practicing attorney. She really kept a lid on, what I got involved in. But in 2007, we had a couple of shops in town, scratched the surface, and I don't know what the other name of the shop was. But a couple of Hells Angels, against my wishes and against my advice, decided they were going to get involved with these shops that opened up. And they firebombed them. James Ivins and Jared Pamel, both were Hells Angels. Both wound up becoming informants. along with Rob Smith. That Vegas guy talks about Rob Smith all the time. But Rob Smith was an informant. He also was going to testify against me in that 2011 that ultimately went to trial, started to go to trial in 2013. But, you know, I'm not admitting to anything. I never will admit to anything. I didn't give anybody a direct order. Their own informant, Crash, said that, did George give you a direct order to firebomb the tattoo shop? And his answer was, no, he didn't, but I knew what he was thinking. So apparently, these ex Hells Angels that are now informants can also read my mind, along with their great testimony they give to grand juries and courts and whatnot. But the case I wound up I was looking at 3 mandatory minimums of life for the use of arson to control business. I don't. It's all federal racketeering stuff. My daughter worked on that case for 3 years, got it whittled down. I wound up doing. I did a couple of years on house arrest, and I went to Texas and did a year there. Uh, Celled up with the Banditos there, and one of the leaders of the Banditos had a pretty good time. Came back in 2015, I think. I had sold the business in 2013. My daughter took care of all that stuff when I was locked up. But that's kind of the history of the intimidation allegations and arson allegations and everything else that goes along with it for Ventura. I try to get back into doing some things on the particular individuals. So if you got somebody you want to know about, write me in the comments. I appreciate you guys following us and commenting. And, if you don't like the commercials, you can always go to Patreon. So that's it for this week. I appreciate all the information and, condolences on Michael Madsen. He's going to be missed. But time just moves on. You lose people, lost a lot of people over the years, and that one kind of affected me last week. But I'm going to quit rambling. I'm going to get off the air now, and I hope you guys will continue to support us and follow us. Okay, thanks a lot, guys.